Yeah, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be going over the boss fight for Count Geonor and his final stage, the Putrid Wolf. This boss fight is the sort of capstone to Act 1 in Path of Exile 2. And it's actually a super fun fight, quite honestly. I love how well designed it is. And so there's like 3 main phases that we got to go over. And each one of these phases has its own set of like unique attacks. And I had to sort of pound my head against the wall a little bit with this boss fight back when I was doing it because of the sheer number of attacks that he has, and you have to sort of learn the tells and react to them in real time. So it took some time to sort of get used to the fight, and so I'm going to teach you what I know now that I've been through it several times. A couple of generic tips if you are stuck on this guy before you go in there. One thing you can do, which is something I did, is I kind of went back a stage to the castle ramparts, and there's a couple of mini bosses that can spawn there, and I actually got some yellow drops that kind of helped beef up my build a little bit more before going into this fight. So you can always backtrack a little bit and do a little bit of farming. You're also going to want to look for sapphire rings, because sapphire rings will give you frost resistances, and then also there are sometimes charms that will help you ignore a slow debuff, and I got lucky enough to have one of those drop as well. And since he uses a lot of frost attacks, being able to resist the slowing effects can be really, really helpful and keep you alive in this fight. But let's start going over his attack set here as just Count Geonor. What he's going to do, he's got a few attacks. One of them is just a forward thrust, and he's just sort of going to pull his arms back, and he's going to shoot out in front of him with this blade attack with frost, sort of imbued on the attack. So you want to do lateral dodges to avoid that one, which is pretty easy to do. He also has a charge where he will run across the room, and he'll sort of like bisect the room, and then he will cap off that charge with a circular slash and a 360-degree motion, full circle. So in order to avoid that, you just back up when you see him charge across the room. You just go the opposite direction so that when he does that slash, you don't get caught in it. Then he has this interesting attack. It's like a 3-part attack where he slashes an overhead slash 2 times, one to the right, one to the left, to create this ice V. And then he will do another big attack straight down the middle of the V and shatter it. So you don't want to get caught in the V. You want to, again, dodge laterally just to get out of that attack. But he's also opening himself up to a lot of damage because this attack is kind of long. So if you've got like attacks that target the ground that do big damage, you can always do that to sort of, as he's immobile, catch him in those effects. Once you get him down to 75% hit points, he will then transform into his wolf form. So he'll sort of like slam his sword down into the ground and then transform into his werewolf. And then he will immediately summon the pack. So he'll do a howl, which will summon a handful of other wolves to join the fight. So you have to eliminate the tiny wolves first and then go back to focusing on him. But during this time, he can do this this like blood meteor attack. So you want to try and keep him in visual range at all times, because if you lose sight of him, you won't be able to see his tells when he does this big meteor attack, which does big damage. So he will sort of vanish into a cloud of blood, and then you will see a circle appear on the ground right at your feet with you at the epicenter of it, this big red circle. And then he will come flying out of the sky as this sort of blood meteor and do a big AoE attack. It does really big damage, and you don't want to be caught in it. So if you can see him visually when he turns into that cloud of blood and then disappears, that's your cue to start running. And if you start then, you'll get out of the attack just fine. Just wait to dodge until the last moment. Don't dodge early. In his werewolf form, he also has a series of just lunge attacks where he'll just lunge and lunge and lunge. So just kind of keep moving in a circular motion around the arena and you'll be fine. But he also has these sort of like blood bombs that he doesn't do them very often. So sometimes it catches me off guard. But sometimes these like blood boils will spawn and then they'll explode. And they've got a pretty big radius. So keep an eye out for those as well. Once you get him down to half HP, 50% hit points, he will then transform into his final form, the Putrid Wolf. And this is where things are going to get a little bit more dicey, a little more higher stakes. So he has this 360-degree, so he's going to actually pick the sword up in his mouth in his Putrid Wolf form so he can attack with the sword. And he'll do this 360-degree slash all the way around him. And the tell for this is really tiny. It's just literally a change in posture where one of his back legs kind of shifts to support the weight of this attack. And that's the only thing I've seen that tells you he's about to do it. It doesn't do a ton of damage, But obviously, if you're trying to do like a no-hit run, or you're playing, maybe I'm playing a very squishy build, like I'm kind of glass cannon that's all about crowd control. So my witch was not very well tailor-made for this fight, which is why it lasted 7 minutes. Because I'm all about like raising zombies and doing minion attacks and locking down areas with AoE attacks. So I was not really well kitted out for single target damage for this fight. And I'm also a bit of a glass cannon, so I'm trying to avoid as much damage as possible. But then he also has this attack that usually he will announce it. In fact, he'll announce a lot of his attacks in this final form, where audio cues will tell you a lot about what you need to know. But he will often cue up this attack by saying the word Requiem.
Requiem on high.
When you hear Requiem, he's going to drop these sort of ice missiles, I guess, from the sky. They'll be marked by these beams of light that will come down. You just want to get as far in between these as possible, because while the beam itself is really narrow, the ice missile that falls down and detonates there does have a decently large AoE, so you want to be really far away from these things. He will also continue to do his blood meteor attack, where he will disappear into a cloud of blood and then mark the ground with a circle and come drop down on you. So you want to make sure that you can try and keep him in visual range at all times so that you can see when he does that. But one of the coolest things he does in his final form is the hunt, where he will howl and this like misty cloud will kind of hug in tight, and it does damage, so it'll force you to the middle of the arena where you're now in this really small cage of fog. And during this time, a bunch of little werewolves are going to come in and attack you. So for me, I'm spamming my my bone cage attack and my contagion attack. So I'm marking things that come in with this sort of plague, and then I'm trying to impale them so they can't attack me as much on this this cage of bones that kind of spawns around me. I'm spamming that just to do an AoE to take care of those guys. But during this time, the Geonor is going to be dashing through. And he'll be doing pretty good damage when he dashes through, if he catches you in that dash. Now, you don't have time to react visually. Like, you can't just see him coming and be like, oh, it's time to dodge. Like, when you see him, it's too late. He's already mid-dash right on top of you. So what you need to do is you use your ears. He's going to do this, like, monologue where he will go through. It's almost like a poem of sorts. And every line of the poem, he will deliver the line, count to 2, then he comes through. So he'll deliver a line, 2 seconds of silence from him, and then he dashes through. And it's always 2 seconds.
The eternal impure with blood.
So you want to be listening to his monologue while you're fighting the werewolves, and anytime you hear a stop in his dialogue, that's when you're going to count to 2 and dodge. And you don't want to dodge early, because he will always dash directly at you. So if you dodge early, you're going to come out of your dodge unable to move for a split second, and that's when he's going to hit you. Once he finishes his monologue, the cloud will clear, and you'll go back to the standard arena size and back to the fight. Now, in his Putrid Wolf form, he does have a couple of other quick attacks I want to mention. One of them is he will always say, "I smell your blood." And when he does that, there's going to be this creeping frost that crawls across the ground. You just have to back up as far as possible, because eventually the ice that is marked on the ground will erupt in an icy explosion. So you just don't want to be caught in that, because if you do get caught in it, it will slow you down, and then he will start doing some of his, like, his blood meteor attack, and you won't be able to get out of it. He also has a really simple just cone frost breath attack that he'll sprinkle in every now and then, which is really easy to avoid. Now, once you get him down to 25% hit points, this is where things are going to get a little bit different. He's going to go into sort of this enraged state. And the only thing that's going to change is that he's going to start throwing in, the Requiem ice missile attack. He's going to start throwing in that in the middle of some of his other attacks and other combos. Except now they're not just going to be imbued with ice, they're going to be this blood magic as well. So you'll see that, like, crimson-y purple color around them. And he will sprinkle those into, like, the creeping frost attack. There's a number of things that he's usually going to have those falling from time to time. So at this point, I say just pedal all the way to the floor. Like, now that the arena itself is much more dangerous, much more volatile to be in, you really just want to brute force your way down the last 25% of his HP, and that's exactly what I did. And that is his whole moveset, all of his phases, and how to avoid those attacks. You do all that stuff, learn the attacks, you'll be fine. So I hope you found this breakdown of Count Geonor helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments below. And here, I'll just show you my build as well. When I did this, I was I was only, I think, level 17, level 18 at the time. So I wasn't like hyper over leveled for this or anything. And like I said, my build was all catered towards crowd control and being a glass cannon. So it's like all about AoE lockdowns and spreading contagions. But I can't spread, like the whole idea behind my build is that the contagion gets stronger with every subsequent enemy that it attaches to. And when there's just one guy on the field, it doesn't do a whole lot of damage. So I was not well kitted out for this fight. But we made it happen either way. With a better build that's focused on single target DPS, you'll be able to take this guy down a lot faster than we did in this video. And with that, I say thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, then let me know by leaving a like in the video, as that's the best free way to support the content right here on YouTube. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.